A group of Tibetans in Canada have started a project creating a permanent archival record of Tibetan immigration to the country. The project is called Chisholm Project. Joining me for the conversation today, I have Rignam Wangkang, who is a founding member and one of the spokesperson for the Chisholm Project. Tashdile Rignamla, it's lovely in every way to have you here. Welcome to our show.
Tashdile, thank you for having me.
Rignamla, what does Chisholm mean? Could you tell us briefly about the background of this project?
Yes, so Chisholm means the collective welfare, someone who thinks about the collective welfare and believes in the community and is community-minded. We chose that word as the name of the project to represent and symbolize the spirit of the first Tibetans who came to Canada back in 1970, 1971. They were extremely community-minded, cared about each other and were there for each other, and passed that identity and passed that philosophy down to their children as well to this day. And how the Chisholm Project basically is trying to create a permanent archives of the story, the immigration story of the Tibetan Canadians that came to Canada in 1971. We're doing that in collaboration with the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21 by recording their stories, their oral histories, gathering every photo and document they have for an ebook that we're creating, and also a digital archive for the Canadian Museum of Immigration.
Rignamla, how did the initial idea come to you, and why did you think that it was important to start such a project?
The initial idea came to me, well, first of all, my bala was one of the first two Tibetans, Tsering Dorji Wangkang, to come to Canada in 1970, came through an immigration program with the Bata Shoe Factory. And that was something that I always knew about and wanted to learn more about. After he had passed, I understood that he had a book that he was writing, and I went to read it. And as part of that, I did a radio documentary with the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, that just kind of talked about my journey of discovering my bala's immigration story and his life in Canada. After that documentary was released, it got a really good reception with the Tibetan community around the world and in Canada. And I was approached by many people about how interesting it was to hear his story and how many other Tibetans had gone through similar stories. And actually one Tibetan came to me, Diki Choyangla. She had listened to this radio documentary and talked about how her father also had a similar path. And we talked over the phone, and she had talked about an idea that she had about gathering all these oral histories of the Tibetans that came to Canada back then. And because of how valuable it was so important to gather these stories before they passed away, because for many Tibetans, young Tibetans, the only ways we hear about Tibet is through the stories of our elders. That's what connects us to the land that we've never been to. So we needed to preserve those stories before they passed away. And we thought that was one of the most important things we could do to respect them and to keep the memory of Tibet alive, especially when we see the Chinese government constantly creating their own narratives when it comes to what happened inside and outside Tibet.
Exactly, Rignamla. Every individual Tibetan have a story to tell, and I think it is really important to deliver their stories and make us, the younger Tibetan generation, be aware of the stories of our older generation. And also, like you said, the Chinese authorities constantly trying to destroy the Tibetan narratives. This project becomes really important for the Tibetans. Anyway, Rignamla, recently I was watching one of your videos and I actually saw the authentic footage of the first Tibetans arriving in Canada. I was just wondering as to how you were getting all the archival materials from.
Mm-hmm. So most of it has been through the families. Some of it has been through media and news outlets, some of it through the Canadian Museum of Immigration and what they have already and what the government has. And then a lot of it is just through the families. We've spoken to many families already. We've recorded their histories. We've interviewed them along with the museum and gathered their stories. And they're all willing to give, whatever photos and videos they have. And it's been a really wonderful process.
Where have you all reached regarding the stage of development of the project?
So we are currently in the stage of gathering the stories. We have already gathered stories from many of the first families that came to Canada. We are continuing to look for more to fill out the ebook and along with the archives of the museum. We've worked with the museum to gather stories. We're training young Tibetans to also gather stories of their own families. And we are, looking for stories, photos, documents. We just launched our website and also launched a crowdfunding campaign to fundraise the initiative and to create the ebook.
You have recently started with this project in the late 2018 and early 2019s?
It started in 2019.
How many members are there in your team and how many Tibetans residing in Canada are taking part in the project?
We have a core group of 9 volunteers that meets every week on a call, and then we have 6 volunteers that help in many capacities. And then we just have the support of the whole Tibetan community in Canada and support from a lot of the first families that came. They are all willing to help in any way they can to give their story and to help find documents that we need or news articles. We also get the help of many Tibetan organizations like the Ottawa Friends of Tibet and TCCC and many others in Canada.
The first Tibetan group arrived in Canada in 1971. At that time, there were only 240 Tibetans. Now, obviously, the numbers have increased. How is the Tibetan Canadian community doing overall?
I would say we're doing amazing given the circumstances. We've lost our country. We've come to a new country that we've had no experience in. I've heard stories of people, when they first came to India, they never even knew what electricity was. So to be able to continue to adapt is incredible. And in Canada, now we have close to 10,000 Tibetans. So to start off with Maipala, who was one of the first 2 in 1970, to now have a community of almost 10,000 that's thriving, especially when the first batch came, it was so hard for them because they were spread out across Canada. They weren't just in Toronto. They had to go to small towns across the country and work on farms, do really tough labor. And to see the community now and how they organize, how they show up, and how they are active and together and united, it's really amazing to see.
Can you share one of the stories with us?
Yeah, I can say that there's so many stories, but I remember one story of one of the elders who was a close family friend of mine, and he told me about how he was tasked by one of the close Tibetan government aides that was close to Kundun, and he had to deliver a very important message that was to go to the UN. It was during the time when Tibet was really in dire straits and needed help from the outside world, the international community. So he had to get on horseback and go through, the different borders, go through Chinese guards, had experienced so much, pain and had seen a lot of death and just barely made it to get out of the country and then go meet one high Tibetan executive leadership, and he had the manuals and the documents that proved that Tibet was a country to give to the UN and to eventually, hopefully, campaign for Tibet to be, kept free. And so he was given this mission, and it was incredible to hear the details of it, that he was able to make it out alive and campaign for Tibet.
That's an interesting story, Rignamla, and thank you for sharing. And congratulations, as next year hits the 50-year mark of the Tibetan refugee settlement in Canada. This is a wonderful project, and I think other countries should also adopt the same initiative as that of Chisholm project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rignamla, for coming to our show. It was lovely doing this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV.